Good morning, everyone, for the second day of the pre-budget consultation. Sorry, we are about 7 minutes late, but we were just waiting for some people to log in. As you know, our Feminist Policy Collective, we are about 2 years, I think now, old formally, though we had been meeting for some point of time, even earlier. And this is basically to focus on and to extend the concept of gender budgeting into transformative financing. We have been working, we've been having several workshops on, the basis of violence. We've had pre-budget consultations earlier, the macroeconomic components of budgets. So we've had several programs at an earlier level. And this work, which is carried on over the last year and a half or almost 2 years now, much of it online as most of our work is there, we have divided ourselves roughly into somewhat overlapping, but separate responsibilities into 4 working groups. So we have one working group on the macroeconomic contextualization and issues of revenue raising, taxation, etc., where gender budgeting is concerned or transformative financing is concerned. Then there's another group on livelihoods, which takes up employment across all sectors and related aspects in terms of wages, inequalities, etc. There's also a group on health very specifically, and I think now gaining a lot of importance where the pandemic or the pandemic policy response is concerned. And the 4th group, which is on domestic, on violence, actually, not only on domestic violence, but the kind of violence, I think, within and outside in the public sphere, and something which is encouraged, normalized, internalized at various kinds of levels. So these are the kinds of issues we work on and have taken all these into account in the various sessions where we have divided our pre-budget consultation. So yesterday, we had the primary focus in the morning on the macroeconomic fundamentals of transformative financing. So the issue of fiscal deficit, the issue of monetary policies in particular, taxation policies, what is the international contextualization of what is going on in India. And of course, locating India in the context of where we were when the pandemic came, and the kind of policy response, we did not take that into account, and the resulting increase in inequalities at all levels, economic, extra-economic, political, constitutional, that's another very important factor. Then the second session, we moved on to special groups on which there's very, very little focus, if at all, in transformative financing and of course in the budgets. So we had those with representatives from organizations, those with disabilities, sex workers, extremely important, transgenders, single women, a long category of people, Adivasis, that's another thing, and of course manual scavenging and the caste issue. Then we went on to 4 specific presentations related to the kind of work which has been going on, primarily in the context of transformative financing, within the group and also related to the group indirectly. And therefore, we have the right to food, the right to health, the right to work, these kinds of issues which were debated on. Today, we will have 3 sessions. The first one in terms of what we call promising practices. So there are certain states which have taken certain kinds of policies in relation to the kind of work which has been done after the pandemic. So we have illustrations, of course, of Kerala, and we are very happy to say that Dr. Iqbal, who's heading the expert committee on COVID-19, is with us for that. Rajasthan, Nisar will be presenting. We have Navanita presenting on the Orissa experience, and on the Maharashtra experience, we have Hemangi and Shakuntala. The next session, which is after the tea break, is basically in terms of the GRB procedures, that is gender responsive budgeting procedures, and some changes, very interesting, and from which we can learn a lot from, which have come from the experiences of Kerala. So we have Nidhulipan with us for that. Hilda, who's a very central part of the group of the FPC, talking about Andhra. Nilanju on Assam, and two other very, very important issues. And one is the violence against women, which Sunita Dhar will be presenting, and how that is represented or not represented in the gender responsive budgeting component. And we have representations from CBGA also. The post-lunch session will, in a way, take issues forward in not only in specific terms, but relating it to the broader changes which have come, and that is specific recommendations. Some which have already been made, but new ones which are being made in relation to representatives of domestic workers. So we have Geeta Ramakrishnan who will be talking on that issue. Women farmers, so Makam will be presenting that. A very important aspect which came up in the migrants and the lockdown which was there, which was the issue of housing and urban poor, that is homeless and urban poor, which Ashok Pandey from the Land Rights Network will be presenting. Single women's groups, I think this is something which is extremely important. So we have Ekanari Sangatna and Nirmal will be talking from that. Child care, I think that is issue which is just not seen in terms of any other kind of a context apart from, say, those who are working on gender issues who take this up. So we have Sumitra Mishra from Mobile Creches who's taking this. And of course, extremely important, the informal sector workers. So Seva, Paramita from Seva will be presenting this. So we'll start now and then hand it over to Nilangi for the thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ritu. Good morning, all. Ritu has briefly talked about given the background of this session, which is titled like State Responses and Promising Practices. So basically, yesterday when we were discussing, the discussion focused largely on the response by the central government. But while we were designing this program, we thought that there are different states who have done something positive, which have started in a pandemic period, but I think they have a general, like we can also apply them for the general situation to improve the access for public health services or also for like livelihood. So today we have 4 speakers with us. I will just say the sequence with which we can have the presentations. First, I will request Nisar Ahmed to go because he has done a overall analysis of different initiatives taken by states. So it's an overview of different initiatives. It will be followed by Dr. Iqbal's presentation about Kerala, then Maharashtra experience of health system, and then Navarita about the employment. So I'll just introduce Nisar first, and we will have around 15 minutes of presentation for each speaker, and then we will like to have discussion around for 15-20 minutes. So Nisar is a member of Feminist Policy Collective. He is a founder director of Budget Analysis and Research Center BARC Trust. Previously, he has worked with Astha, CBGA, and Indian Social Institute, among others. He has long experience in research, advocacy, training, working with various civil society networks. Nisar has worked in the areas of social policy issues like mining-induced displacement and its impact on women, impact of the economic liberalization on the poor women and children, and analysis of government budgets with a pro-poor, pro-people perspective, including local government budgets. He is a trainer on GRB, Panchayat budget and planning, development-induced displacement and issues. Thanks a lot, Nisar. Just after 10 minutes or 11 minutes, I will indicate. Yeah, okay, no worries. So we will start with Nisar's presentation.
Okay, thank you, Nilangi. Thanks a lot. I'm going to give an overview of select states we studied, and this was done before the second wave. So this is largely, what happened, how the state governments, various state governments responded to the pandemic during the first wave and after that, to provide people relief from the pandemic, and the pandemic induced various calamities like livelihood and other issues which people were facing. So what we did, we took these 6 states and it's just a desk study, and we just looked at their announcements, their government orders, and the newspaper reports, and based on this based on these sources, we categorized or we looked into these 5 areas: food security, income security, employment, social security for vulnerable groups and migrants, and nutrition security for children and women. So we thought that what these states representing these regions of India, how they tried to cope up and how they tried to provide relief to the people. So these are the limitations. This is focusing only on, this is based on desk study. This is focusing on these states, and this was done before the second wave. So if I talk about food and nutrition security, generally most of the states gave this free rations under NFSA and Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Some states also announced distribution of dry rations to non-NFSA benefits for short periods. But there are some interesting initiatives, other than the general ones. The state government of Odisha launched its own state food security scheme for poor, distressed people and eligible persons in the states who have not been covered under NFSA. Punjab government launched a door-to-door drive to distribute 10 lakh packets of dry ration to daily wages and unorganized laborers. Each packet contained 10 kg of flour, 2 kg of pulses, 2 kg of sugar. These are something which we could get from
the slide changing is not reflecting on the screen. Do you want to stop sharing and share again once?
Okay.
Just try stop sharing and sharing again once.
Or maybe that just that not
Yeah.
your presentation.
Don't do slideshow, do the other one.
Okay, just
उससे चलता है.
Share screen.
Instead of full presentation, just side view.
Ah, okay. Shall I tell her to?
नहीं ये तो
Just hold on for a minute, please. There's a technical issue of the slides. 1 minute.
Just get out of slideshow, this escape.
ये हो ही नहीं रहा. हाँ अब बंद हुआ, sorry. And share again, ना? But now it is showing.
हेलो नमस्कार सर, मैंने भी ज्वाइन कर लिया हो जी.
It's on now.
So okay, I'll continue as Shruti is trying to share. So what I was saying is that this study has not actually looked into the implementation part of these announcements, and that we will hear from Dr. Iqbal, Nabanita, and other panelists more. But here we have listed some of the interesting announcements, some of the interesting schemes announced those days. For MDM and ICDS services, most states announced delivery of dry ration in lieu of MDM and take-home ration for the hot cooked meal. But that this is also like in Rajasthan, we saw that the implementation was not very good. Punjab government empowered, but this one is very interesting decision. Punjab government empowered the Gram Panchayats to spend rupees 50,000 per month and rupees 5,000 per day for providing food and basic livelihood to poor people. Chhattisgarh announced that they said that 2 quintals of rice would be allocated to every Gram Panchayat for distributing to the individuals.
I'm sorry, I will share from there. It's not visible for others.
So I'm not sharing, I'm just reading from here.
No, but it should be shared.
Yeah, I will share it from there. You can just close it here. It's fine. I'll do it from there. So I know where to change.
Confusion हो गया. You can't read this slide.
तो दिख ही रहा है तो मैं शेयर क्यों कर रहा हूँ? Now I understand the problem. Okay. Finally, what?
Now she's putting.
Yeah, मेरा हो गया. Sorry. I'll be very fast.
No, this is very important.
Yeah.
We'll extend it to lunch.
So Chhattisgarh government also, empowered the panchayats at local level. 2 quintals of rice was allocated to every Gram Panchayat for distributing to the individuals without ration cards, up to 5 kg for an individual. The state government also announced to provide 1 kg of gram for free to all beneficiaries of PDS for April to June. Next, please. Then, that is the problem. She can't hear my next, please. Shruti, please move ahead. Yeah, for income security also, many states, including Rajasthan, provided this ex gratia amount. In Rajasthan, it was repeated in 2021, again, of 2,500 it was. In Odisha, for NFSA beneficiaries, it was 1,000, 1,500 for construction workers. 1,500 for construction workers was across the states because it did not come from the state exchequer, it came from that BOCWB fund. So it was there in most of the states. Then rupees 3,000 to registered street vendors. It was in Odisha, and we did not find it in other states. In Assam, the state launched one-time payment for rupees 1,000 to the construction workers. Gracious relief for urban people for a period of 7 days to all wage earners, rickshaw pullers, slum dwellers. 7 days was a very small, but they covered so many categories of people. And then they also announced, the Assam government, interestingly, $2,000 US dollars to resident of Assam stranded in foreign countries. Other state also provided, as I said, ex gratia amount to registered construction workers who are registered under the state BOCW boards. Next, please, Shruti, if you are hearing me. Then employment. So as we know, this Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Guarantee Scheme or Act helped people a lot during this. This and NFSA has been, two of these have been accepted by all that who have really helped people. But in urban areas, there was no such initiative. But some states came out with such initiative. Perhaps we'll hear more about it from Nabanita, about Odisha. Urban Wage Employment Initiative, Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister's Urban Livelihood Guarantee Program, Kerala Ayanakalli Urban Employment Guarantee Scheme. We'll hear more about it from Dr. Iqbal, I'm sure. And Jharkhand Mukhyamantri Shramik Yojana. So these were, focusing on urban people who needed some employment. So this was very interesting initiative. Also, it becomes very important an initiative by these state governments because there is a demand to launch urban national employment scheme, same on the as we have Manrega. So these experiences will tell us how to do it or how not to do it, and what are the benefits. Next, please, Shruti. Most states announced advance payment in social security. In terms of social security, what most states did was they announced advance payment of the various social security pensions, which people were already getting. So they said 2 mahine ka advance, 4 mahine ka advance, kisi state ne kaha. Kerala rupees 1,000 per family person. This was interesting for families not covered under earlier schemes. So they took it to people who were not already getting some pensions. Also, Odisha home delivery for 4 months of pension in advance. As I said, advance was announced by many states. And I think now I'm about to reach my last presentation. Shruti, please. Support to the migrant workers. This was those days in the first lockdown when we saw people walking kilometers, hundreds of kilometers actually, and people were stranded here and there. And in those days, actually not many state governments did really. With only 1 or 2 exceptions, we did not see, very imaginative programs. But Kerala, for example, we will hear, of course, from Dr. Iqbal, set up more than 4,000 relief camps for 1.44 lakh migrant workers, and 35 camps opened for 1,545 homeless and destitute people. And it was lauded the way it was managed. It was lauded for the facilities it provided, the kind of support it provided. 24 hours services were there, and migrant workers did not really feel like walking back to their faraway villages and homes. So this was really a very nice, interesting initiative. Creating WhatsApp groups to communicate, identify key worries, prevent the spread of rumors, connect guest worker matlab jo migrant workers with their home state nodal officers, provide workers with entertainment facilities, televisions, cable networks, pen drives full of movies. So these things, because people were really kind of what to do, kare kya, din bhar baithe reh rahe hain isme apne camp mein. So these things help people there. There were reports those days. Chhattisgarh government, the Building and Other Construction Workers Board sanctioned fund of rupees 3.8 crore for providing food, shelter, medical support, transport and other facilities to registered laborers of all districts of the state. But this was limited to the construction and building and other construction workers, because it was coming from that board which is created in every state, which is functioning for a long time. It's not created during the pandemic, but it helped during the pandemic to the people. UP government constituted something called a Migrants Commission. We could not find much about what this commission was supposed to do or what actually it did, but this name sounded interesting. So this we got from the survey of the 6 states initiatives and their support program. Now for detail of at least these 3 states, we can hear from the other panelists. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nisar. I think your presentation has beautifully brought out the strength of the state governments, and if the state governments are really pro people, a lot can be done and could have been done. So we now move on to the presentation by Dr. Iqbal. It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Iqbal for the presentation. Dr. Iqbal is a public health activist, a neurosurgeon and an academic in Kerala. He is chairperson, COVID Expert Committee, Government of Kerala, and former member of the Kerala State Planning Board over 2 terms. He has played a vital role in People's Plan campaign, a decentralization move by the Government of Kerala. He has a long association with KSSP and JSA. He was the Vice Chancellor of the University of Kerala during the period 2000 to 2004. So welcome, Dr. Iqbal. You may start your presentation.
Yeah.
Good morning. I am indeed extremely happy to be with you this morning to participate in the pre-budget consultation organized by the Feminist Policy Collective. In fact, in Kerala also we are doing this, but in Kerala, you know that the planning board is continuing. Even though the planning commission has been dismantled by the national government, we are continuing with the 5-year plan programs. So we are having a pre-budget, 14th 5-year consultation in Kerala, apart from the budget for 2021 and 22. I hope I can share my slide. Let me see.
Yes. Yes, you can, sir.
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes. Pin. Speaker view pin. Okay.
Well, in this presentation, I will be broadly outlining the way we try to combat COVID-19 in Kerala, our experience. And from the experience, we can gather some policy level initiatives, policy level implications in future, especially when we look at the 2021-22 budget. I am very thankful to Dr. Nasal Ahmed, who has already said a few points in this regard. But basically, I will be presenting how we managed the COVID and our experience, and then from it, how what all policy level implications can be drawn. This is not specifically on gender issues, but on general issues. I hope that Dr. Mridalipan might have talked about the gender aspects in her presentation here. Now, these were the major COVID major challenges which everybody was facing, starting from the flattening of the curve. That is the buzzword. What it means is that the number of cases should not overwhelm the treatment and care facilities with us. That is the most important thing. Otherwise, people will be suffering. We have heard people on the streets and those who are without oxygen, ventilators, etc. That should not happen. That actually did not happen in Kerala. And also we should have availability, accessibility and affordability of treatment, which we were talking earlier as universal healthcare. And we have to keep the death rate low. And we also should stress on the social responsibility of private sector. In other parts of India, apart from Kerala, about 70–80% of the healthcare is delivered by the private sector. So there should be some amount of social control and social responsibility from the part of private sector. And of course, we have to protect the vulnerable and the marginalized, because this virus has been described as inequality virus. Say a lot of inequalities produced. It is not only a medical problem, it is also a social and economic problem. And vaccine distribution is very important. Genomic sequencing is important because we should detect early any new variant that is happening. In fact, the latest variant, which has got high infectivity, has originated in Maharashtra in India itself, the Delta virus. And there are a large number of post-COVID conditions that are now emerging. We have to look into that. Now, Kerala had certain advantages when we were facing the COVID, that we have a fairly robust public health system. And the last government, 2016 government, started what is called Ardhra Mission. Ardhra means compassion, by which we improved the infrastructure and human resource facilities in the public hospitals. We converted the primary health care centers to family health centers. In fact, Renu Khanna was in Kerala to visit these centers. And with the result that now we are covering 70% of the people in Kerala are covered by the public health system. And any medical college, public medical college in Kerala is in fact better, I mean, in terms of facilities and human resources are far better than any private super specialty hospitals in Kerala. And we have the local self-government institutions in position. We implemented what is called the People's Campaign for Decentralized Planning from 1996, where there is a decentralization of healthcare has happened. From primary health centers to district hospitals have been handed over to the local self-government institutions, which ensured community participation. This is very, very important. Now, we had experience with not a pandemic, but a very severe infection, the Nipah experience in 2018 and 19. So much so that, in fact, people were wearing even masks at that time. And we had flood during 2018-19. So all this was a learning experience for us, how to manage such cases. Now, but Kerala had a lot of challenges when compared to other Indian states, that the density of population is very high. Next to Bihar and West Bengal, the density is highest in Kerala. And in Kerala, there is no rural-urban, I mean, there is a rural-urban continuum in Kerala, unlike in other Indian states where the rural areas are cut off from the urban centers. And therefore, the possibility of the disease spreading very fast is high. And the elderly population is very high, about 60 years, around 17 to 20% of people are above 60 years. And the comorbidity is high. It is a highly morbid state that should be understood. The non-communicable disease high. It is said that Kerala is the diabetic capital of India. About 20% of people are suffering from diabetes. Infectious diseases are also fairly prevalent in Kerala, including H1N1, leptospirosis, waterborne diseases are there, and also mosquito-borne diseases. Aedes aegypti density is high. We recently had Zika virus infection also during this pandemic. And we have a sizable migrant population, 3+ million. We call them guest workers. So our attitude to migrant population is different here. And during COVID, we had around 4 lakhs persons here. And there is a big migrant population also, 4+ million population are outside. So there is a two-way movement of people from within outside Kerala coming to Kerala and people moving from Kerala to outside. And this can in fact result in rapid spread of infections. The hallmark of Kerala management of COVID is that we expected that this is going to come to Kerala because large number of students from Kerala were studying in Wuhan. And as you know, the first case was detected in Kerala in January 30th. But immediately after and even before that, we prepared for confronting COVID by organizing COVID hospitals and other facilities. So early preparedness was one of the hallmark of COVID management in Kerala. And we also set up different expert groups, State Rapid Response Team, Medical Board, and State Expert Group, which is now being chaired by me. Now, the management strategy was the broad management strategy, as we know, testing and treatment and contact tracing. But the more important is evidence-based treatment protocol. This is extremely important. In fact, already at the state and national level, we have a standard treatment protocols for management of various conditions, which is not followed generally. And I think we have to highlight in the budget next year that standard treatment guidelines should be followed, which will cut down treatment expenditure. It will promote generic prescriptions, etc. And then we followed home institutional quarantine, reverse quarantine of risk. This was very important in Kerala because the elderly and those with comorbidity were high. These are the people who are dying. So there were ward level committees which managed this reverse quarantine. And that is why the death rate in Kerala is lower than that of national average. And we started what is called the treatment, the COVID protocols like hand washing, masking, social distancing sufficiently early. We called it break the chain campaign and community surveillance and set up COVID hospitals. Now, this was the break the chain campaign, which we started fairly early. And the COVID management facilities were very well ordered. We say a domiciliary care center, that is those who are asymptomatic. You know that 70% of the persons are asymptomatic in COVID. And in their homes, there may not be facilities enough to manage them. Therefore, we have set up what is called domiciliary care center. And then there are COVID first line treatment and second line treatment center, because there is a triaging system. We have categorized the COVID as per the symptoms, and only those with severe symptoms go to the COVID hospitals, which were in the district and general hospitals and medical colleges. So this is fairly well set up. And these are the list of, we have in fact classified it into stage 1, stage 1B and stage 2 and 3, because we expected large number of cases to come. And therefore, the early preparedness was there. And there was no dearth of hospital beds in Kerala at any stage, even in the second wave. We had what we would like to describe as a private-public cooperation. It is not private-public participation. Private-public participation, unfortunately, means privatization of the public sector. But what we did here was entirely different. The ICU beds, we asked the private sector to set apart 10% of their ICU beds for COVID cases. And in fact, they handed over 2 medical colleges as was COVID hospital to the government. We did not take over, actually they voluntarily came in Kasaragod and Kannur districts where treatment facilities, and Kasaragod and Wayanad districts, 2 private COVID medical colleges were handed over to the government. And we have what is called Karunya Arogya Suraksha project. This is a modification of the Ayushman Bharat. And 282 private hospitals joined the CAS program. So those who went to the private hospital got free treatment. And as far as the other private hospitals are concerned, the COVID management charges were fixed by the government, and the private lab also, the COVID test charges were fixed. Now, this is the most important part, which again, Nasal Ahmed mentioned about this. We provided free ration to all, including those who do not have a ration card, migrant labor, the guest workers, with 13 items were there in the free ration. And welfare pensions which were pending were given. Apart from that, 1,000 rupees were given to those who are not being under the pension schemes. And the guest workers were given accommodation and other facilities which Nasal Ahmed elaborated here. And we also started the community kitchen during the lockdown period. This was very important that on all the local self-government institutions, this were started, and about 8.6 lakhs persons were provided free food in the community kitchen. And there were people-friendly kitchens also where foods were served at a reduced rate. The MNREG, and of course, it was mentioned here about the Ayangali urban centers, the allocation, of course, the central government increased the allocation, but the state government also seen to it that this is implemented very well, and therefore the person days generated during COVID was more than that was, if you compare with the pre-COVID situation. And women person days per is as high as 90% in Kerala, and the average wage also is a bit more than the Kerala government provide that. So it was a big success, the MNREG program in Kerala, both the urban and the rural. We have a Sannadha Sena, what is called the volunteer groups, social volunteers were mobilized, and these are the number, the latest figure, and they were serving at various services were provided by the volunteers. And we have an e-Sanjeevani program. This is a national program, but fairly implemented fairly well in Kerala, so that we can actually meet the doctors from their homes. That is, stay home OPDs were established, and psychosocial supports were given. This is very important. In fact, it produced a huge psychosocial effect, especially among women. And this was a psychosocial support were given very effectively. And we had this second wave. The second wave came to Kerala late, actually. And everybody was wondering what is happening to Kerala. In fact, the latest figure shows that the larger number of cases were reported in Kerala. And it was not surprising, because if you look at the zero prevalence study, June to July, in Kerala, the zero prevalence was only 44.4%, whereas the national average was 66.7%. And in some states, it was as high as 75.3%. This was because during the first wave, these states were not effective in controlling the first wave. Kerala controlled it very effectively. That is why the zero prevalence rate in Kerala was very low. And because therefore we are in a disadvantaged position, because our low zero prevalence, and because we controlled the first wave fairly well. So the vulnerable population was very high in Kerala. And moreover, we had a high density of population. And third problem was that we were facing a Delta virus during the second wave, which has got a reproductive value very high. But even during the second wave, there was absolutely no problem in patient management. Oxygen supply, ICU beds, ventilators, and medicines were aplenty, and nobody suffered from lack of these facilities. And these are the COVID and non-COVID occupancy status. At the height of the second wave, if you look at the state average, it was only 62.6% utilization. And if you look at the ventilators, it was only 29.4% of utilization. So this was provided fairly well. So that means we achieved the flattening of fairly well. And the vaccination status is also very high here. The single dose, we have already distributed above 18 years, 95.0% answer. Second dose, 58.11%. And you know that women outnumber men in accepting vaccination here. And we have a target of completing the 2-dose vaccination by January 30th. That will be the second anniversary of COVID coming to Kerala. Now, current situation is that if you look here, the more important thing is that in spite of the demographic shift and higher number of elderly population with comorbidity, death rate is only 0.69% as on today, the recent latest statistics, whereas it is above 1% at the national average. And if you look at the analysis, we regularly do death auditing. And if you look at that, about 67% of people have got associated more than one comorbidity. Only elderly with comorbidities are dying. And if you look at the vaccination status, the interesting thing is that death has happened in 90% of cases in unvaccinated patients. Only 2.46% are fully vaccinated who suffered from breakthrough infection. So this is the statistics. And even in those cases, they were having multiple comorbidities. Now we have facing some vaccine challenges. That is, there are large number of breakthrough infections. And if you look at the infection in Kerala, it is about more than 40% are breakthrough infection. That is, those cases who have taken vaccines, persons are getting infected. This is because the opening up has started, people are fatigued, there's some amount of burning out of following COVID protocols, and therefore some amount of laxity has come. That may be the reason why the breakthrough infection is happening. And we have also found that when we have this second dose vaccination, there is some amount of vaccine hesitancy in Kerala, especially among the educated people. It is not anti-vaccine. There is no anti-vaxxers movement in Kerala, but some amount of vaccine hesitancy has come. We are looking into that. And the current strategy is that facelifting of restrictions, reopening of education institutions. We have already reopened the education institutions, and we have to address the problems of the vulnerable, because this is not only a medical problem. We understand very well that it's a socio-economic, cultural, educational problem. And we have already done a socio-economic study by the Economic and Statistic Department and identified which are the vulnerable groups who are suffered most during the COVID, and we are trying to protect them. And we have to complete the vaccination. Genome sequencing is very important to detect new variants. We are focusing on healthcare workers who have breakthrough infections. These are the groups from which a new virus variant can emerge. And we are also doing an immune decay study so that whether we need a booster dose or not can be decided by that procedure. Now, this is a very important issue which I would like to highlight, especially in relation to the budgeting that we started, like in many other states, online classes as well as digital classes using Victor's TV channel. And it was found that, especially KSSB has made a very good study. There is a big digital divide existing even in Kerala, because to join an online class, we need appliances, connectivity, data charges, content generation. And there is an education inequity can be further increased because of such type of education. So
Okay.
even after, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but just if we can focus more on key asks in next like 3-4 minutes, will that be possible? How many
Yeah,
slides?
I am closing down. And
Okay.
in future, there may be hybrid classes. So therefore, we should highlight that the central government should close digital divide in future. Now, when you look at the Kerala experience, we show that we had a big social capital, and this could be mobilized. This social capital could be mobilized because of decentralization of healthcare. And these are the last points which I want to mention in relation to the budgeting, that we have to strengthen the public health institutions. We have to funding of the Ayushman Bharat and Pradhan Mantri and also the ABHIM program of the government of India, which provides infrastructural facilities to government institutions, as well as the PMJY has to be increased. And secondly, we have to reduce morbidity. And we are now starting health and wellness centers. We will have to look at it. The funding has to increase. And more important, I would rather suggest that the Feminist Policy Collective should suggest to the central government that decentralization of healthcare is essential so that social community participation can be.
Social control of private sector, very interesting.
Yeah. And we have to control social control of the private sector. And we have to treat our migrant laborers as guest workers, and their interests should be protected. The digital divide should be closed. And in medical research, I would suggest that we should move to open source research models, where rather than competition, we do collective open source approach to medical research. And we should move to one health, one world approach. That is to say that we cannot protect the health of the human beings. We have to protect the health and the animal world, as well as we'll have to protect the environment. And one world, because what we learned from this COVID experience is that the world is not only interconnected, but also interdependent. So we should have more international solidarity. This is what I have to share with you this morning. Thank you.
And thanks a lot, Dr. Iqbal. A lot of learnings from Kerala experience, and one always gets filled with positivity. I think once we look at what Kerala has done, and also at the same time, some amount of rage in terms of why other states didn't think of it, why other states didn't do it. So thanks a lot for sharing this wonderful experience of Kerala, how they have been able to manage the pandemic with even despite having high proportion of elderly people with comorbidities, the death rate has been low. So we will also take some more points through the discussion. We will now move on to Maharashtra experience, which is going to be presented by Hemraj Patil and Shakuntala from Sathi. Hemraj has overall 13 years of experience of working in the public health sector, out of which 2 years with Tribal Development Department and also community development processes. And since 9 years, he's been working with Sathi. His basically work involves around like community-based monitoring and planning of health services, decentralized health planning. And currently he's working with rural organizations in 17 districts of Maharashtra for public participation in health services, right to health and social audit. So last year, actually, he was centrally involved in the help desk for setup for the COVID-19 response and outreach work for responding COVID-19 situations with the public health system. Also welcome Shakuntala Bhalerao, who is working in Sathi for last 11 years. She is a health activist and also actively involved in Jan Swasthya Abhiyan Maharashtra. Welcome Shaku and Hemraj, and they have been friends and former colleagues of mine. So I'm really happy to have you here for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nilangi. Just one, sorry for, I would like to present in Hindi because
कोई
I am
बात नहीं, हम लोग दोनों में कर रहे हैं, no nothing to be sorry about. So Hindi and English दोनों fine, no worries. Yeah.
Okay, चलेगा. शकू will present. शकू पहली स्लाइड घेतीस?
UP.
हाँ, एक तो महाराष्ट्र में कम्युनिटी बेस्ड मॉनिटरिंग का एक बहुत बड़ा स्पेस पहले से था, एक नेटवर्क था. इसके साथ ही गवर्नमेंट ऑफ महाराष्ट्र जो जब से NHM शुरू हुआ है तब से साथी और इस प्रोसेस को पकड़ के रखी है उन्होंने. तो इसके साथ में कम्युनिटी बेस्ड वर्क क्या होगा कोविड-19 में, इसके लिए हमने NHM के साथ में बहुत सारे कम्युनिकेशन हुए थे. लेकिन आइडिया निकल के आई कि कोविड फेज के अंदर अगर पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम और नॉन कोविड पेशेंट्स को अगर सर्विस देनी है तो कुछ कम्युनिटी लेड प्रोग्राम होना चाहिए और वहीं पे होना चाहिए. और दूसरी एक बात निकल के आई कि इस कोविड फेज में मतलब पहले तो यही था कि लोग अस्पताल जाने में डर रहे क्योंकि कोविड मतलब वो आपको सबको पता है. तो इस दौरान 3 फ्रंट पे मेजरली गवर्नमेंट के साथ काम शुरू हुआ. एक कम्युनिटी रिलेटेड एक्शंस जिसमें IEC, मॉड्यूल डेवलपमेंट, ट्रेनिंग, ओरिएंटेशन इसकी जरूरत थी. और ये हमें एक समझ में आया जो इसमें एक हम केस रखना चाहते हैं हर इस टाइप के वर्कशॉप में. जो कोल्हापुर करके एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट है जहाँ पे बुदरगढ़ नाम का एक ब्लॉक है, जहाँ छोटा सा ग्रामीण रुग्णालय है. वहां पे कम से कम दिन में 250 से ज्यादा OPD रहती थी. और कोविड जब से शुरू हुआ वो OPD एक 20-25 के अंदर ही आ गई. मतलब दिन में 20-25 लोग वहां पे आने लगे सिर्फ. और डर के मारे वो एक तो घर पे रह रहे, डर के मारे एक तो या फिर उनको इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल ही नहीं रही. तो इन फेस में जहाँ वहां से जो नेटवर्क जुड़ा था हमारे साथ CBM के साथ में, कम्युनिटी बेस्ड मॉनिटरिंग के साथ में, उस नेटवर्क ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने संपर्क किया और उन्होंने बताया कि हम यहाँ पे हमारी तरफ से कंट्रीब्यूट करते एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. और अगर हमें NHM की तरफ से सैंक्शन मिल जाए, क्योंकि लोगों को अगर अस्पताल में बिठाना है वो भी परमिशन लेनी उस टाइम में लेनी जरूरी थी. तो गवर्नमेंट ने थोड़ा मतलब लोकल ब्लॉक मेडिकल ऑफिसर है, DHO है या THA, उनके लेवल पे, क्योंकि NHM के तब तक तो गाइडलाइंस निकल चुके थे कि कोई भी बाहर नहीं आएगा और बाहर का व्यक्ति अस्पताल में नहीं बैठेगा. लेकिन लोकल लेवल पे ये परमिट किया गया है कि आप यहाँ पे 2-3 लोग रख सकते हो जो कोविड और नॉन कोविड इन लोगों को हेल्प कर सकते हैं. क्योंकि हेल्थ स्टाफ भी 50% काम पे था. हेल्थ स्टाफ में भी इतना टाइम नहीं था कि वो तो हर पेशेंट को काउंसलिंग कर सके. काउंसलिंग थोड़ा आगे वाला शब्द है, लेकिन बता सके कि भाई यहाँ पे क्या मिलता है क्या नहीं मिलता है. तीसरी बात थी कि यहाँ पे हेल्प डेस्क और हेल्पलाइन दोनों इस ब्लॉक लेवल की रहेगी, जो कोविड, नॉन कोविड, कोविड सेंटर, कोविड अस्पताल, कोविड टेस्टिंग इसके बारे में मालूमात दे सके. मैटरनल हेल्थ के ऊपर PMJY और MPJY ये तो था ही, लेकिन मैटरनल हेल्थ के साथ में महाराष्ट्र में जो और सभी स्टेट में जो चल रहा है कि मातृवंदना योजना, JSY और बाकी की जो स्कीम्स है और सर्विसेज है उसके बारे में राइट इंफॉर्मेशन दे सके. क्योंकि बहुत सारे अस्पताल में महाराष्ट्र में जब से कोविड सेंटर किए गए, ग्रामीण रुग्णालय या RH जिसको बोलते हैं रूरल हॉस्पिटल, वहां का सेटअप भी चेंज किया गया था. तो इसलिए मतलब लोग आते थे देख के बाहर चले जाते थे, इस टाइप का जो चल रहा था. तो इसमें हमने की एक्टिविटीज सेटअप की वो कोल्हापुर के आधार पे कि हम कोविड रिस्पांस एक्टिविटी करेंगे. इसमें हेल्थ गवर्नमेंट यहाँ पे सपोर्ट करेगा, लोकल हेल्थ जो भी सिस्टम है सपोर्ट है वहां से. सेटअप किया। दूसरा, एज एन डायरेक्ट असिस्टेंट टू पेशेंट एंड हेल्थ स्टाफ। दूसरी बात ये थी कि हमें जो चैलेंज सबसे ज्यादा हेल्थ स्टाफ को था कि लोग उनके सुनते नहीं, या वो भी उस मेंटेलिटी में नहीं कि लोगों को हर टाइम बताते रहे। तो इसमें हमने एक एज एन एक्टिविटी और कोर की मॉडल में एक डाला कि हमारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, हमारे साथ में जो एनएचएम का मैंडेट है, वहाँ पे जो कम्युनिटी लीडर्स हैं वो वहाँ पे बैठेंगे और वो उनको साथ में स्टाफ को गाइड करेंगे। जो भी कुछ बेनिफिशियरी रिलेटेड इंफॉर्मेशन थी हमने वो सब कलेक्ट की डिस्ट्रिक्ट से, डिस्ट्रिक्ट आईसी कलेक्ट की, और वहाँ पे जितना ज्यादा हो सके उतने ज्यादा लोगों तक पहुंचने का प्रयास किया। ये एक उसमें था। चौथा एक की था कि जो भी कुछ अपडेटेड इंफॉर्मेशन है कोविड इम्यूनाइजेशन के बारे में हो या टेस्टिंग के बारे में हो या और कोविड सेंटर्स के बारे में, वो तुरंत वहां पे उपलब्ध करवा देना, लोगों को बताना, क्योंकि हर हफ्ते हर दिन कुछ ना कुछ अपडेट्स आते रहते थे, गांव वाइज अपडेट्स आते रहते थे। तो इसमें हमने तीसरा जो हमें प्लेटफॉर्म जिसको हम बोलते हैं कि डिजिटल इंडिया, इसमें एक था कि हमें जो मालूमात थी कि जितना पॉसिबल है वो ऑनलाइन ही हो सकता है, तो हमने ऑनलाइन के ऊपर उसको फोकस किया। इसमें पब्लिक हेल्थ रिलेटेड सर्विसेज लोगों को बताने के लिए कोई टीम तैयार होनी चाहिए, जो टीम एज उसका टीओटी अगर किया जाए तो बेसिक इंफॉर्मेशन दे सके। तो हेल्प डेस्क कोऑर्डिनेटर या उसके साथ में जो आउटरीच का काम करने वाले लोग थे, उनके साथ में ब्लॉक वाइज डिस्ट्रिक्ट वाइज ऐसे वर्कशॉप ऑनलाइन किए गए, जिसमें वो ट्रेन किए गए कि भाई कोविड क्या है, नॉन कोविड सर्विसेज क्या है, कोविड रिलेटेड सर्विसेज क्या है, और अपने डिस्ट्रिक्ट और अपने ब्लॉक में क्या परिस्थिति है, इसके बारे में उनको ट्रेन किया गया। और ये एज एन एक्टिविटी फिर आगे जाके कंटिन्यू हुई कि रेगुलरली फिर बाकी के ब्लॉक लिए गए। कुल मिला के अब तक 40 ब्लॉक में हेल्प डेस्क शुरू हो चुके थे। 40 ब्लॉक में कार्यकर्ता ने अपने अपने ढंग से अपने अपने हॉस्पिटल में उसका इनॉग्रेशन किया, हेल्प डेस्क के सेंटर का आयोजन, उसको एथोराइज डेस्क बना दिया, मतलब उस पीरियड के लिए। और वहां से फिर आईसी शो की आगे। तो साधारण अगर देखे जाए तो इस स्ट्रक्चर मोटा मोटी ये था कि रूरल एरिया में एनएचएम के साथ में अनुसंधान ट्रस्ट और साथी की जो टीम थी, उन्होंने एक मतलब ऑनलाइन सपोर्ट के माध्यम से रूरल एरिया में 18 हेल्प डेस्क शुरू किए शुरुआती तौर पे। हर ब्लॉक में 30 विलेजेस के अंदर हमने आउटरीच का प्लान किया कि वो हर गांव में अपना एक बंदा जाएगा जो एएनएम एमपीडब्ल्यू के साथ में, क्योंकि ये बंदा जो है जिसकी कम्युनिटी सुनती है, एएनएम एमपीडब्ल्यू के गांव से निकाल दे रहे लोग, आशा की सुन नहीं रहे, तो भाई ये कुछ पाड़ा मीटिंग्स या कॉर्नर मीटिंग्स इस टाइप से, और इनके पास कॉन्टेक्ट भी थे, वीएचएनएससी के मेंबर्स के कॉन्टेक्ट थे, वीएचएनएससी मेंबर्स सुनते हैं, इसलिए उनको हमने ट्रेन किया और हर ब्लॉक में 30 विलेज में शुरुआत की गई। कम से कम 571 गांव में जितने सीएच और सीबीएम के कॉन्टेक्ट है, इतने गांव में प्रोसेस शुरू की गई। ये बाकी सब ये है। टोटली 16 हर ब्लॉक में 2, मतलब 16 ब्लॉक में हमने ये का एचआर 16 एचआर हमने तैयार की। पहली जो टीम थी जिसमें था ऑनलाइन रिपोर्टिंग था, ऑनलाइन रिव्यू था, ऑनलाइन डेटा कलेक्शन था। डेटा कलेक्शन में इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ कि रेगुलर कुछ ना कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन अपडेट वहां पे पहुंचना चाहिए, और वहां की स्थिति क्या है ये भी डिस्ट्रिक्ट को पता होनी चाहिए। वो तो थोड़ा सेंट्रली हमें देखना था, इसलिए वो भी हमने किया। तो ये मोटा मोटी स्ट्रक्चर था कि जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल सेटअप पे था। नेक्स्ट, दूसरा जो एक इनिशिएटिव लिया गया स्टेट और एज अनुसंधान ट्रस्ट साथी की तरफ से कि सीबीएम के नेटवर्क में बहुत सारे लोगों के पास स्मार्टफोन्स है, और गांव में स्मार्टफोन के साथ में भी आईसी हो सकती है, पोस्टर लगवाना और ये सब था, लेकिन वहां पे रीच नहीं था, आप जा नहीं सकते थे गांव गांव में, लोगों को बता नहीं सकते। तो हमने कोविड की कौन सी इंफॉर्मेशन गांव में जाना जरूरी है इसके बारे में मालूमात ली पहले, उसके बाद उनको एक छोटा टेम्पलेट बनाने और एक सिंगल डिस्प्ले में दिख सकता है और ज्यादा से ज्यादा पिक्टोरियल हो सकता है, कम से कम लोगों को देखते ही समझ में आए इस टाइप का उसके मिसकंसेप्शन जो थे उनके बारे में हमने आईसी का और पोस्टर डिजाइनिंग का शुरुआत किया। कुछ जगह में कुछ कार्यकर्ताओं को टेक्निकल सपोर्ट किया कि भाई हमें लोगों तक पहुंचना कैसे, मतलब व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप बनाना, मतलब हमने उसी दौरान में 3200 लोगों का व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप बना सिर्फ 3 दिन में। मतलब ये 3200 लोग उन तक हम डायरेक्टली दूसरे दिन पहुंच चुके थे, जिसमें आशा थी, आंगनवाड़ी वर्कर्स थी, कुछ पीआरआई मेंबर्स थे, सरपंच थे, पुलिस पाटिल थे, और इस ढंग से हमने प्रोसेस शुरू की। हेल्प डेस्क, हाँ आगे आगे, हेल्प डेस्क के साथ में इन लोगों के साथ में जो टीम तैयार हुई थी उनके साथ अगर देखे, अभी रिसेंटली जरा अगर देखे पिछले 6 महीने का डेटा शकु नेक्स्ट देखे जाए तो अप्रैल से सितंबर मतलब लास्ट मंथ तक अगर करंट डेटा देखा जाए तो हेल्पलाइन जो ब्लॉक पे सेटअप है, जो ब्लॉक कोऑर्डिनेटर वो हेल्पलाइन चला रहा है, उस पे अगर देखा जाए तो 5195 फोन कॉल्स आए जो मैटरनल हेल्थ के बारे में पूछे गए हैं, जो एमपीजेवाई के बारे में पूछा है, पीएमजेवाई के बारे में लोगों ने पूछा है, या फिर नॉन कोविड सर्विस मतलब सोनोग्राफी से लेके एक्सरे तक, ओपीडी से लेके आईसीयू तक, इन सभी चीजों के बारे में लोगों की अभी डिमांड बढ़ रही है कि भाई इनके बारे में हमें मालूमात चाहिए। हेल्प डेस्क डायरेक्ट फेस टू फेस कांटेक्ट देखा जाए तो 23,000 लोगों ने कांटेक्ट किया है सिर्फ कोविड के बारे में। इसमें इम्यूनाइजेशन आता है, इसमें सीसीसी सेंटर आते हैं और कोविड अस्पताल के बारे में है। तो ये भी इंफॉर्मेशन हमने जो ली तो 13,000 लोगों का यहाँ पे
और 3-4 मिनट में आपकी बात आप पूरी कर सकेंगे?
यस यस, तो ये मोटा मोटी डेटा जो है, मतलब इसमें आगे जाके जो दिख रहा है कि भाई ये जरूरत है अस्पताल में, अगर कल हेल्प डेस्क कंटिन्यू होता है तो इस टाइप की इंफॉर्मेशन की जरूरत है और लोगों तक वहाँ हम पहुंच पाएंगे। हाँ, एक ग्राफ से जो ब्लॉक वाइज है उसकी जरूरत है। आगे शकु।
इसके बाद शकु का अलग से प्रेजेंटेशन है
या एक उसका एक 10 मिनट हो जाए, 10 नहीं
तो जल्दी से शुरू करेंगे क्या? बिकॉज आई थिंक नंबर्स में इतना हमको ये नहीं है, या इट्स मोर ऑफ लर्निंग द स्ट्रेटजीज और ये है, so I think we can skip the numbers and we will share these slides with the
11th नंबर की स्लाइड शकु है कि 11th आणि 12th।
so जो कॉमन लर्निंग है वो सिर्फ शेयर कीजिए।
इसमें कॉमन लर्निंग्स अगर देखा जाए तो एक है कि गवर्नमेंट के साथ में काम किया और कम्युनिटी के साथ में काम किया तो एक बहुत बड़े इश्यूज जो थे वो सॉल्व हो सकते हैं, जिसमें ऑक्सीजन बेड से लेके रूरल हॉस्पिटल के स्टाफ तक इन सभी लोगों को एक हेल्प हो रहा है। बहुत सारे लोगों मतलब अस्पताल और पीएचसी और इसमें एक जो कमी रह गई गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से जो फेस टू फेस आईसी या फिर इतने आईसी की जो लोगों तक पहुंच सके। आईसी दिख रहे टीवी मीडिया और इसमें दिख रही पोस्टर में दिख रहे, लेकिन वो रीडेबल फॉर्म में या लोगों को समझ सके इस टाइप में अगर आईसी हो तो जरूर हेल्थ सर्विसेज और बाकी के चीजों में लोगों तक वो चीज पहुंचते। अगर इसमें थोड़ा सा और सपोर्ट किया जाए गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से, अभी भी बहुत सारे जगह पे इम्यूनाइजेशन नहीं हो रहा है क्योंकि मिसकंसेप्शन है, लोग अभी भी इम्यूनाइजेशन के लिए जा नहीं रहे। तो अगर इसमें अगर क्लियरली ज्यादा फोकस अवेयरनेस पे दिया जाए तो काम हो सकता है, वहाँ पे पार्टिसिपेशन अगर लिया जाए तो वहाँ पे हो सकता है। लोकल पार्टिसिपेशन और लोकल लोगों तक पहुंचने के लिए लोकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का अगर सपोर्ट लिया जाए, जो एनजीओ बेस है या संगठन बेस है उनका सपोर्ट लिया जाए तो उनमें भी एक आउटरीच सक्सेस हो सकता है। या मैं यहाँ पे रुकता हूँ।
थैंक यू हेमराज। शकु आप भी 5 मिनट में इफ यू कैन से द की पॉइंट्स फ्रॉम योर प्रेजेंटेशन।
ओके नीलांगी, बहुत ही मतलब इम्पॉसिबल है कि 5 मिनट में हम रखें, क्योंकि अगर महाराष्ट्र की बात रखनी हो तो उसके लिए टाइम लगेगा, तो मेरे को लगता है कि शायद हम स्किप भी कर सकते हैं।
नहीं करें प्लीज, ओके यू टेक योर टाइम बट नॉट
implications for the budget अगर वो spell out कर दें, you know, कि बजट के लिए हम क्या गुड लेसन्स लेकर के और उसको इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं अपने रिकमेंडेशन।
हाँ, व्हाट बाकी स्टेट्स को क्या करना चाहिए आपके ये पूरे एक्सपीरियंस से आपको जो लगता है ना कि जो हम हमारा जो डॉक्यूमेंट गवर्नमेंट को सबमिट होगा उसमें क्या जाना चाहिए, इफ यू कैन डायरेक्टली टॉक अबाउट इट दैट विल बी गुड।
या अगर सपोज स्टाफ को अगर वहाँ पे
शकू का जो है ना प्रेजेंटेशन में उसमें
स्टार्ट करते हैं। हाँ, तो मैं एक्चुअली मैं यहाँ पर हूँ, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ साथी की रिप्रेजेंटेटिव नहीं हूँ, क्योंकि महाराष्ट्र में कई सारी चीजें पिछले कुछ महीनों में और कोविड के दरमियान हुई है, तो मेरे को लगता है कि मैं थोड़ा फास्ट लेती हूँ, लेकिन मैंने पहले भी बताया कि ये बहुत ही इम्पॉसिबल है 5 मिनट में रखना। तो हम सबने ये परिस्थिति देखी है जो भारत में हुई है, और जहाँ पर हम देख रहे हैं कि जिस देश की स्वास्थ्य सुविधा इतनी कमजोर हो वहां पर ऐसी ही चीजें घटी है, और जो हम सबने आंखों देखा हाल अनुभव किया है। अगर लेसन के बारे में हम अगर देखना चाहते हैं तो मेरे को लगता है कि एक 3-4 चीजें हमको ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए कि पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम ये हमारी लाइफलाइन है ये पूरे समाज की, और वो यहाँ पर बहुत ही कमजोर रही है। जहाँ पर हम कोरोना योद्धा को लेकर बहुत ही मतलब जहाँ पर जो पावर में बैठे हुए लोग हैं फूल बरछाए, थाली बजाए, ढोल पीटे, लेकिन आज तक हमने देखा है और महाराष्ट्र में कोरोना योद्धा को जिन्होंने अनाउंस किया था और जिनकी डेथ हुई है उनको अभी भी कॉम्पनसेशंस नहीं मिले। तीसरा ये मुद्दा है कि प्राइवेटाइजेशन और प्राइवेट हेल्थ सिस्टम ये पूरी तरीके से फेल हुई है, और यहाँ पर उसका रेगुलेशन बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट रहा है, क्योंकि जरूरी नहीं कि कोविड की बात हम कर रहे हैं, उसके पहले भी प्राइवेट अस्पताल ने जो लूट मची है उसके लिए रेगुलेशन यही हमारा एक मेन महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा रहेगा। और ऑब्वियस हमारा जो ऑब्जेक्टिव रहा है सबका कि फ्री हेल्थ केयर टू ऑल, ये हमारा सबका राइट है। तो इसके बारे में और ये बेसिस लेते हुए महाराष्ट्र में कुछ अभियान आंदोलन हुए, जिसमें जन स्वास्थ्य अभियान महाराष्ट्र का इनिशिएटिव रहा, क्योंकि हम देख रहे थे कि पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम कोशिश करते जा रही है, लेकिन प्राइवेट हेल्थ सिस्टम जो डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एक्ट, रेट कैपिंग, MPJY, महात्मा ज्योतिबा फुले जन आरोग्य योजना, NHRC के जो एडवाइजरी थे, ये सबका वायलेशन करते हुए प्राइवेट हेल्थ सिस्टम यहाँ पर पूरी तरीके से मनमानी की है, और इसके चलते हमको कुछ ना कुछ करने की जरूरत है। पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए हमको कुछ मांगे रखने की जरूरत है। इसके लिए जन स्वास्थ्य अभियान ने इस साल मतलब मेरे को लगता है कि अप्रैल से लेते हुए महाराष्ट्र में एक बढ़िया आंदोलन अभियान की शुरुआत की, जिसमें जन आंदोलन संघर्ष समिति और जन स्वास्थ्य अभियान साथ में रहे हैं। तो सॉरी, इसमें यहाँ पर दिखाई दे रहा होगा कि ये कैंपेन में कुछ महत्वपूर्ण बातें, इवेंट्स, एक्टिविटीज हमने की। करीबन 15 से ज्यादा डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स और सिटीज में वर्कशॉप लिए, कुछ जिलों में कमिटीज गठित हुई, जहां पर सोशल मीडिया कैंपेन हर रोज होते रहा, जो कुछ फोटोग्राफ्स हम आगे भी दिखाएंगे। कई सारे डिस्ट्रिक्ट से डेटा कलेक्शन किया, एनालिसिस हुआ, और वो एनालिसिस के चलते एक बढ़िया प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस रहा, जहां पर मीडिया ने कई सारे न्यूज़पेपर ने उसको कवर किया, और वो मुद्दा हाईलाइट हुआ कि पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम स्ट्रेंथन होने की बहुत जरूरत है ये पेंडेमिक के दौरान। कुछ जगह हम डायरेक्टली उसको जन सुनवाई नहीं कह सकते, लेकिन डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे आरोग्य हक परिषद की गई। बीड़, अमरावती, अकोला में अभी प्लान है। और उसके बाद वाला एक महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा ये रहा कि हम उसको ज्यादा अंडरलाइन हाईलाइट कर सकते हैं कि जैसे मैंने कहा कि प्राइवेट अस्पताल में मई 2020 में महाराष्ट्र सरकार ने एक नोटिफिकेशन जारी किया जिसमें महाराष्ट्र के 80 प्राइवेट अस्पताल के 80% बेड्स पे रेट कंट्रोल होगा। और ये रेट्स ये नोटिफिकेशन का वायलेशन करते हुए बहुत सारे जगह हमको दिखाई दे रहा था कि प्राइवेट अस्पताल लूट मचा रही है। तो उसके चलते हमने कुछ एक्टिविटीज किए, वो हम आगे जाकर दिखा रहे हैं। ये कैंपेन की कुछ चीजें हैं जिसमें मराठी, हिंदी, उर्दू में भी पोस्टर और लोगों तक मैसेज जाते रहे। कुछ स्टोरीज हमने की है जो हर रोज लोगों तक गई। कुछ सवाल थे। ये कैंपेन के कुछ हाइलाइट्स हैं जो महत्वपूर्ण है जो महाराष्ट्र में हुए। ये नोटिफिकेशन था, ये जो मेरे लेफ्ट साइड।
Chaku, can you go directly to the recommendations part because we have one more presentation. So जो recommendations है ना बाकी states की, इसमें से जो learning निकला, जी अभी शायद time थोड़ा कम है because हमने पूरा presentation 15 मिनट के लिए रखा था। Already हमारा almost 20 minutes से ऊपर हो गया है। तो if you can just say कि क्या बाकी, see the objective is that बाकी states को क्या करना चाहिए. So if you can just and also what should go in the recommendations part so that governments like other states can do it. So that will be good actually.
वही मुद्दा है कि ये जो मतलब और कोई स्टेट्स में ये नोटिफिकेशन निकला है जो प्राइवेट अस्पताल पे रेट कंट्रोल हुआ है। तो ये नोटिफिकेशन लेते हुए, इसका आधार लेते हुए हमने कई जगह मतलब साथी का जो हेल्पलाइन चला वहां पर लोगों के हेवी बिल्स जो आए थे उसका ऑडिट की डिमांड की। और ये हमारे कोई सक्सेस स्टोरी रहे जहां पर एक 90,000 का चेक रिफंड प्राइवेट अस्पताल से मिला। और यहाँ पर ये पोस्टर में जो बाबा दिख रहे हैं उनका 83,000 का चेक हमने रिफंड किया है प्राइवेट अस्पताल से। मेरे को लगता है कि रिकमेंडेशन में हम क्या ये कह सकते हैं अलग के लिए कि ये नोटिफिकेशन लेते हुए या प्राइवेट अस्पताल ने जो ओवर चार्जिंग किए हैं उसको लेकर हम अगर ये कैंपेन करेंगे और प्राइवेट अस्पताल से रिफंड की मांग करेंगे गवर्नमेंट को लेते हुए, ये मतलब एक आंदोलन या नेटवर्क का मुद्दा हो ही सकता है, लेकिन उसमें मेन इंटरवेंशन ये स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का होगा। तो मेरे को लगता है कि ये ज्यादा बढ़िया रहेगा। थैंक यू, मैं यहाँ पर रुकती हूँ।
थैंक यू एंड रियली सॉरी कि हमारे पास टाइम कम है। आपने बहुत कुछ चीजें की हैं पिछले 1-1.5 साल में, बट वी हैव वन मोर प्रेजेंटेशन। आई थिंक आप दोनों के प्रेजेंटेशन से जो हाईलाइट होता है कि एग्जिस्टिंग स्ट्रक्चर्स जो हैं विलेज लेवल पे ऑलरेडी, विलेज हेल्थ एंड सैनिटेशन कमिटीज एंड ऑल, सो उनको कैसे एक्टिवेट किया ड्यूरिंग दिस पीरियड। एंड अनदर इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट आई फेल्ट वाज इंफॉर्मेशन गैप. So most of the work which is required, because people were really helpless, they didn't know where to take their patients and all. So I think this experience of Maharashtra was really helpful in that. We will now move on to the presentation by Navanita. Navanita Das is a part of the governance unit of CYSD Bhubaneswar, Odisha, and she has done her master's, MPhil and PhD in sociology. She's an ICSSR doctoral research fellow at the National Institute of Technology, Rourkela, for her doctoral research. And in addition, she is also associated with the health, nutrition, WASH and urban governance aspects of CYSD for 5 years. And she has published in several journals and contributed her editorial volumes along with working papers on health, environment and urban governance. Welcome, Navanita. You can start your presentation.
Good morning all. Am I audible? I'm just sharing my screen. Just a second.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, as Nesha has already mentioned, so I'll be focusing on the Urban Ways Employment Initiative. It is being announced by the government of Odisha, especially during the COVID-19 lockdown period, to provide employment opportunity to the urban poor who are working mostly in the unorganized sectors. So to start with, so I can say the Urban Ways Employment Initiative was introduced by the government of Odisha and the Department of Housing and Urban Development just to support, to provide livelihood support to around 4.5 lakh of families residing in the urban regions of the state. And it will cover all the 114 ULBs, urban local bodies of the state. So the specific works, the scheme has defined some specific works under the scheme. The first one is to the stormwater drainage. So it will the workers who are engaged in this scheme will be involved will involve themselves in desilting of drains, removal of silt and waste management and removal of waste from the drains, and then rainwater harvesting. So in this rainwater harvesting section, it covers the construction of water harvesting structures to retain rainwaters, and then increase in green cover and beautification. It also covers the green drive, like plantation near the river water bodies, near the parks and the roadsides. Then sanitation activities, it covers the waste management and recycling and reuse of construction materials with the help of self-help groups, and construction of public urinals at the high footfall zones. Then at last, community centers and open space development. So it covers the construction of micro community centers, not large, very micro community centers and work centers for the SHGs to provide the built up space or provide them the space for their work at a very micro level. And in addition to this, some beautification aspects have been added, like wall painting and murals. So this is the budget allocation of your Urban Ways Employment Initiative. So in total, 100 crore has been allocated to implement the scheme, and it covers to the all 114 ULBs of the state. Depending on the population size, the budget has been allocated separately. For example, for the Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation, rupees like 10 crore has been allocated. The next to this, Cuttack, Rourkela, Sambalpur and Berhampur municipal corporations have been allocated 5 crores each. Then municipalities of Puri, Baleshwar, Baripada and Bhadrak has been allocated 1.67 crore each. And rest of the municipalities except these, rest 44 municipalities have been allocated 94 lakh each. And all the 61 notified area councils have been allocated 36 lakhs per. So to implement the scheme, some standard operating procedures have been also declared. At the ward level, a ward level committee will be there, and they will be deciding the projects under their jurisdiction. And next to ward level committee, there shall be a ULB level committee to finalize the projects to be undertaken by these wards, and an estimation, and it has been decided that up to 1 lakh, if a project is costing about 1 lakh, then the SHGs will be doing the things, and the JE will be helping and supporting them. And if the project estimation is going beyond 1 lakh, then the concerned JEs and AEs will be doing the projects, and the SHG groups and slum development associations will be supervising them. And there is a defined cost, there is a defined ratio like 70 and 30. So 70% will be wage rate and 30% will be material cost. And the material procurement will be done by the ULBs, and the SHGs and the slum development associations will be the implementing partners only. And the concerned engineers of the wards, of respective wards, will be providing them the required plans and are held responsible for the documentation part of every work. The material procurement will be done by the ULBs, and SHGs will be playing the role of implementing partners. And to ensure the transparency of these projects, or information related to work undertaken and number of beneficiaries benefited out of this scheme will be put in the public domain. This is the SOP. So here we can shed some light on the unique features of this Urban Ways Employment Initiative. So for the first time, the execution responsibility of this scheme has been entrusted upon the self-help groups, both rural and urban. Then under this Urban Ways Employment work, the work orders for this project costing less than 1 lakh will be given to the slum dwellers associations and SHGs. And this is not obviously free of cost. The SHG groups or the SDS will be given a supervising charge. That is the 7.5% of the budgeted cost they will be receiving, and 70-30 ratio will be followed, like wage rate and material cost. Then in Urban Ways Employment Initiative, the payment to the workers will be weekly, like it happens in MGNREGA, and there will be direct benefit transfer to their accounts. And the labor charge per day will be 250 rupees. So this is the glimpse of work done under Urban Ways Employment Initiative at Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation area. So as we know, in many times we have come across, like after 74th Amendment Act, though there is a provision for formation of ward level committees each ward, but in case of Odisha, it has not happened till date. But after the announcement of this scheme, we have seen that Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation is having 67 number of wards, and in all the 67 number of wards, the ward committee has been formed. And they are doing like 4 types of works, like drain cleaning and renovation, micro activity center, construction of micro activity center, plantation of trees, and wall painting. We can see the wall paintings done by this scheme, or the workers working through these schemes. And budget for each ward for Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation was decided like 10 lakh. And number of projects they can take in, or each ward can take in up to 8 to 10 projects in their ward, respective wards. And the JE is guiding the junior engineer is guiding the self-help groups in deciding the projects. And the projects are costing, and it's a very, we can say, like a kind of negative thing coming out of this scheme is like, most of the projects are costing more than 5 lakh, and SAGs are doing the supervision duty only, and the JE is undertaking the works. So though the scheme is in a very nascent stage, because it was declared in the last year, in the year of 2020, the month of April to September was the target. So some initial observations has been drawn out of the schemes, or by going through the wards, some of the wards of Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation. The first one is like, as per the guideline issued, around 2 million, like 20 lakh people will be affected in the urban regions of Odisha because of this COVID-19 pandemic, because of this serious number, lockdowns and shutdowns. But the Urban Ways Employment Initiative is provisioned to accommodate only 4.5 lakh families. This indicates like only 22.5% of the urban poor are going to be benefited out of this scheme. Then the second one is, ward level committee will be formed to prepare a list of projects. But in the case of Odisha, in all the wards in the state, the ward level committee is either not formed or not functional either till date, even after the amendment of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. And to roll out the ward level project, the SAGs and their area level federations have been given the responsibility, or the slum dwellers associations. But it is a question that are they capacitated enough? Because in the SOP or in the guideline, it has not been mentioned that the SAG groups or the slum dweller associations will be capacitated to undertake the projects or to supervise the projects. And except the when talking about this 4.5 lakh families, we don't have the proper database, because in the state of Odisha, except the database of construction workers, we don't have a proper database regarding the size of population working in the informal sector, in the mostly in the urban sectors, urban areas and slums. And then last one is, even within the urban poor, the information regarding the urban waste employment initiative has not been properly disseminated till yet. So these are the initial observations out of this scheme. And it has been declared that during the declaration of this urban waste employment initiative scheme, it has been declared by the government of Odisha that if the scheme will be proved beneficial, then it will be extended for the next year. And as per the budget speech of this 21-22 financial year, a whole new scheme on the name of Mukta, Mukhyamantri Karma Tatpara Abhijan, has been introduced. And this will provide the urban poor to the urban poor a wage employment opportunities, who are specifically working in the unorganized sectors, and the migrant laborers who have lost their livelihood due to this pandemic. And 5,368 Mission Shakti groups and federations and 438 slum dwellers associations will be partner in the execution of this project. And a budget outlay of rupees 200 crore has been declared to accomplish this project for the urban areas of the state. So I'll stop here, and I would be happy to respond if any questions arises in this event.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nabanita, and also thanks for finishing within your time. We are actually we have exhausted all the time that we were given, but we can take 5 minutes for.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I think because we have had really good presentations from Kerala, Maharashtra, Odisha, so it will be really good to hear some comments, questions, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. So Renu wants to say something.
So where should I, is it?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, so thank you very much. Very interesting presentations. I had a question for Dr. Iqbal from our perspective. Dr. Iqbal, yeah, you're there. So what I wanted to know is that has sex disaggregated data being looked at in Kerala, for instance, for testing, for vaccinations, for admissions and for deaths? It would be good to know, what the situation was with respect to women accessing treatment and, vaccine hesitancy amongst women, for instance, because in many other states, the figures are lagging when compared with men. And if the figures are good in Kerala, then what are the strategies and what is it that we can learn from Kerala? If you're able to answer this, we would be very, very grateful. If not, we would ask Mridul in the afternoon.
Of course, about adverse vaccine reaction, there is a monitoring system that is going on. In fact, immediately after giving vaccination and post-vaccine, there is a period in which we follow these patients. I mean, those who receive vaccination. And as you know that there are not much of very serious adverse reaction reported so far. And in Kerala, you know that if something like this happens, it immediately becomes a major issue for public debate and discussion. So far, we are very comfortable with that. Regarding women also, in fact, women receive more men. When it comes to vaccination, I talked about vaccine hesitancy. There is